What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am stoked to have a conversation with Schuyler Williamson. It took us a second to realize how we got connected, but Ken Wimberly, who was just a few episodes ago, so go back and listen to that one, introduced the two of us, and it sounds like we have a decent amount in common, Schuyler, so I'm looking forward to having some conversations with you, learning a little bit about your history and who you are and how you got involved in business after running the streets of Baghdad like I did. So let's go ahead and start with an introduction. Tell us about yourself, tell us about your family, and then tell us about your business.
Schuyler Williamson. I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida. I live in Austin, Texas today. I went to, I'm the oldest of three brothers. Went to college at the United States Military Academy at West Point. It's the first time I ever left Florida, was to go to West Point. And so I had an obligation in the military after that. I spent 6 years in the military and got out, and I was stationed at Fort Hood for my first duty station, and that's how we found Austin. I was married at the time. My wife worked in downtown Austin. I drove all the way to Fort Hood the few days that I had until I deployed. Then we went to Fort Bragg, and we exited the military from Fort Bragg. I have two kids. I've been married to my wife for 20 years now, but my children are 12 and 8 years old. My daughter's my oldest. She's 12, and my son's 8. And I own three businesses, or own partner in three businesses. One is a real estate sales company. We sell, about 100 homes a year here in Austin. It's me and three other agents. And year to date, we've sold just over 40 million in volume. I'm a partner in a high-end construction company under the brand Mission Home Builders, and we're building anywhere from 1.2 to $3.5, $4 million houses. The majority of our homes that we're building right now are custom homes for people, but we do a good bit of urban infill development type deals too. And then my third business is my partner with Ken, is Laundry Luv. It's a laundromat franchise. We are the franchisor. So we're pursuing a growth strategy in that business by opening more corporate stores, and then also selling franchises at this point. And, Ken and I both have a background in real estate, and so site selection and just picking A-plus locations for your retail business. I mean, that is our bread and butter, but we're operationally minded as well, just from both of our military backgrounds, because, Ken's a veteran too. So we're picking good sites for these laundromats, and we've got some tight operations on them. So we know we've got a great value proposition for anyone that wants to get in business with us. That
is fantastic. I loved hearing about Laundry Luv and the things you guys are doing over there. So I'd love to hear your perspective as we kind of dig that up.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to three amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
First off, congrats, 20 years married. That is not something that very many people get to say nowadays, which is a shame. It's an absolute shame that we don't get to hear that more often. So congratulations, especially for military couples. That's not always folks, whether one or both are in the military, is not something that you usually see, which I'm sure you saw in just your 6 years, how many families are split apart throughout that time.
Yeah, just for my own unit alone, I was a platoon leader as my first position in the military. I had 30 guys total. 18 of them were married when we left to go to Baghdad. When we came back, only 2 of us stayed married. Yeah. And so, for your folks that listen, and I know you're a veteran, so it probably comes up a lot, but these guys, they do serve. They put their life on the line. A lot of them say time out and go deploy and fight on our behalf. But it's more, it's more service than it seems, because the families serve with us, and some of these folks, the spouses, didn't sign up for the service, and so they'll be good in the beginning, and then some of them lose their steam, and it's really hard to maintain your marriage when you're on the other side of the world. And like us, we only got to call once a week for 30 minutes at a time. The rest of the time we were living out in the city because General Petraeus had a surge. And so my guys didn't get, even if they wanted to help their spouses, they had 30 minutes to do it before we had to head back out. And so it was just, it's really a difficult thing. And I feel very blessed to have my wife. I mean, that marriage is my greatest accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things I tell people all the time that and I don't know, I've said it probably 1,000 times on this podcast, is the number one choice you can make besides following Christ, because I'm a Christian and I think that is the number one choice you can make, is finding the right wife. If you find the right wife, it will make or break everything you do. But for some reason, we don't necessarily... I think it's strongly incumbent on the father to make sure that these kids understand what it means to find a good woman, why it's such a big difference. And by living that out side by side with my wife, we can show them what it means, but I also need to be able to teach them. It's something if I were to be honest, kind of lucked out on. I didn't have a whole lot of guidance on what it meant to pick the right wife and all these different things. And I'd love to strongly encourage fathers to engage with your kids, like explain to your sons what it means to find a good wife, explain to your daughters what it means to be a good wife and find a good husband, because that is going to make the biggest difference in your life. And if you're gone for 18 months on a deployment, knowing that you have a strong, capable wife at home who's there supporting you no matter what, whose gaze is not off somewhere else, who's as difficult as it may be, they're there for you. I think back to World War II, and you're like, boy, they didn't get 30 minutes on the phone ever, and there wasn't a massive amount of divorces. So why is it that this generation had this issue? And I'm just now contemplating that. That's nothing that I've sat down and thought about, but it's sad.
Hey, listen, I'm a Christian as well, and it says it in the Bible. What we put in front of our eyes influences our heart, and what's in our heart, kind of pushes out our actions, right? Or what comes from our mouth, right? And our mouth is life-giving or life-taking. Unfortunately, in today's world versus 80 years ago or 70 years ago, there's more in front of our eyes that are tempting than our grandparents had to be tempted by.
So true.
And look, temptation's temptation. It can be effective, but just the number of impressions that think about our children, the number of impressions that they're going to have to take on and still do the right thing, even though that impression is negative. I mean, it's going to be an amazing feat for those that can actually stay pure and stay on course and kind of have the endurance to move through that. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, your spouse, Kristen and I were able to build wealth because we're just on the same page from that regard, right? If we weren't on the same page from a wealth building perspective, we wouldn't have what we have. If I only had Kristen and I didn't have my faith and I relied on her to solve all my problems that I couldn't solve myself, then, she may look at me differently too, but I'm not doing this life alone. I have a Holy Spirit inside me, and I have a father that's a good father that I can go to, for support when things get really tough, and I don't have to put all that on my wife, and vice versa. She didn't have to put it all on me. When you have that third person in your relationship, in your marriage, I mean, the endurance just shows up. I mean, the love trumps all. But our biggest problems, we're going to God for. We're not going to each other. And I think that's a big deal when we're just talking about marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on, everybody? I wanted to jump in and take a second to tell you about the awesome team over at Wise VAs. Oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, we can feel a bit overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up our valuable time, and it's time to reclaim that schedule, all right? It's time to stop doing some of those $10 an hour jobs and give them back to an elite group of talent that are there specifically to help you and help you stay in your zone of genius. So delegate those $10 an hour tasks to focus on more $1,000 an hour tasks. Reclaim what matters most in your life, which is your time. Get that amazing team of elite remote talent that is there to help support you and make sure that you are giving back the best to your company. So schedule a free strategy call at getwisevas.com/Adam. That is getwisevas.com/Adam. It is an amazing group, an amazing team. They do an awesome job with everything that they've got going on there. If you have some tasks on the side, whether it's administrative, whether it's editing, whether it's recording, whatever it is, they have got an assistant for you, someone who is going to be able to help you out and take some of those tasks off of your plate. I thank Wise VAs every day for helping me process all of these podcasts, helping me take care of a bunch of stuff in the background. And I definitely would recommend them over to you. So again, getwisevas.com/Adam. All right. Thanks a lot. Back to the show. Maybe you're going to God individually, but you're also going to God together because, again, that strand of 3 chords is not easily broken, you know? Yep. And if we can stay together, the 3, like that makes a huge difference. And there's a picture that I've seen, like the triangle where it's got God at the top and the husband and wife, right? Like that's extremely important to have that. But it shows how small that triangle gets. The closer that both of you get to God, the closer you also get to each other, right? Yeah. As you move up that triangle towards God. And it was one of those that's, you know, I would say that it was around the time I was in Afghanistan and I had just barely met my wife. I met my wife right before I went to Afghanistan. And I started seeing some strong men. There was an FBI guy attached to us, attached to our team out there. And I was watching him as a strong Christian go to church and do all this stuff. And I was like, there's an example that I don't think I've seen, right? Because my dad never went to church. I never saw that. You know, my mom did, but my dad didn't. And I was like, that's a phenomenal example. And I should probably do that because I'm going to be getting married one day and I need to be a strong leader in my family. Like all of these things just started to happen. And I was like, holy crap. And then getting married, it helped me. Like it was probably a pretty big triangle. You know, she was probably much farther up that triangle than me, which means the distance between us was also farther. So I had to work my way up that triangle to say, man, oh man, I got to work on this. So I completely agree that looking up to the top of that triangle all the time, making sure that focus is there. And I'll throw this to you. I've said this to as many people as I can, as my kids even know where they're at in the priority list. Like it goes God, my wife, then my kids, then everything else. You know, if those 3 things are out of whack, if the kids go above my wife, bad day. If my wife goes above God, bad day. Like I can't look to her as my savior. Like she's not. There's only one person who can be. So, and my kids, I'll ask them, hey, where are you out in the list? They're like, number 3. We know we're number 3. And I'm like, you're number 3. Don't worry. But
no, we it's kind of funny at our house too, because that's very clear in my eyes. But then when they say, well, mommy would pick us first. And then when they go and try to ask mommy in front of me, she's kind of like, I probably would pick the kids first.
But, that's an emotional decision.
But God is number 1 for both of us, for sure. That's clear.
So I want to rewind a little bit. Like this, as being a Christian, like, did you grow up as a Christian? Did you grow up knowing that? I'm going to ask you 2 parts to that. Did you grow up knowing you were going to go in the military, and did you grow up as a Christian?
Yeah, did not have any desire to go into the military. Growing up, all I wanted to do was be a professional ball player. So I grew up in a pretty humble household. Both my parents worked, and my mother was a nurse, and my father, went straight into the manufacturing world. I think his first job was sweeping the floors, but Dad didn't make a lot of money until I left. Right. And so they had me right away. They got married, had me right away. My mom, I think she just turned 18 when she had me, and my dad was like 20. And so they didn't have anything to their name. And so we grew up, and I grew up feeling that way. You know, we lived in very small apartments and very small houses until I left. And the one thing that I'm very grateful for is just all the love that was in my house. My parents are still married today, and they love each other like that. They were a great example in that way. But we didn't have anything. And I just remember not only thinking myself, but also having these conversations with my parents as I was getting older, that something had to be different if I wanted to live a bigger life. And I wanted a bigger life. And the thing that was closest to me, because I was always a ball player, was, okay, well, listen, my parents can't pay for my college. So I'm going to be so good at ball that I'm going to get a scholarship to play baseball or football somewhere. And I worked hard on my grades because I think it was just innately in me to try to be the best that I could be. But all of my extra time was spent hitting off a tee or running out in the streets or lifting weights. Like I was unlike any other child that I know in how hungry I was to just be a better ball player. And I remember, and so I guess to answer your question, like I wanted to be a ball player. Like that, it had nothing to do with the military in my mind. Now, when I got to my decision on where I was going to go to school, I had some scholarship offers, and then I had West Point. And I remember sitting down at the table with my dad, and he said, "Son, listen, you might make it in the NFL one day, but the chances are you'll get hurt. But if you go to West Point, you'll never struggle in your life." And I remembered it was a big aha for me that for the first time I didn't have to be a professional athlete to be okay. That I could go to school and set myself in a trajectory that there was another way other than just hitting 100-mile-an-hour fastball or tackling somebody really hard. And so even though I hadn't thought about it at all, God had it in my path to go to West Point. And so I went to West Point, and then that's where I fell in love with the Army culture and all that is. But the second half of your question was about
Christianity. Did you grow up as a Christian? Yeah.
Yeah, Christian. Yeah. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, and we did go to church. We didn't go to church every Sunday because it was 3 boys, and we were good boys, but we weren't orderly. I'll say that. We were a lot of noise, and we were a lot of activity, and I think my parents just needed to take a knee sometimes too. And Sunday was the only day they could take a knee. And my dad worked shift work, so he was always. He was working 14 days on, 2 days off. And so my mom had a big job. She was taking us to all these sports. She was working full time and then taking us to all these athletic events. And back when I was growing up, we practiced Monday through Friday and played on Saturday. My kids, thankfully, I don't know how they did it. Thankfully, my kids practiced 2 days and then they have their games. But we practiced every day of the week. And so she would take me to our games, and it'd be all day because we were all 3 different ages, all 3 different teams. So all day would be football on the weekends, and then Sunday would be their only day off if they took one. And so it wasn't a standard in my household that it is today. For my household, for us to get up and go to church, that's a standard that as the father that I make sure that we do. But Jesus was a part of my life, and I've always had the Holy Spirit in me. I had plenty of opportunities to go do the wrong thing, and I never did. But I had this Baptist kind of, hey, God's watching you, and if you do that wrong thing, it ain't gonna be good for you. Yeah. And so it was a little bit of a culture of fear, and that's
Fire and Brimstone Southern Baptist came out. Yeah.
Yes, it was fear and guilt, and it was that kind of pressure that I felt when I thought about God and trying to stay away from the bad things. But you know what? For whatever, it worked for me. And we certainly don't teach our kids that type of Jesus, but it worked for me as I was growing up, and I always was a strong believer. I think that faith is one of my gifts, and I had faith growing up, because I truly believed, in the room with me, God was there and He was watching, and if I did this thing that I was being tempted with, it was going to be the end for me.
Uh-huh.
So I know I went to college, certainly a Christian and believing, and I went to church every Sunday that I was at West Point, and we didn't have something military to do. All the way through school, I was a Christian, and today it looks a little different in my household, but we're still big believers.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, the military can beat it out of a lot of people, right, when they go in. And I've always been curious if it's different when you go through like an academy versus going in as an enlisted guy right into the thick of it with, where at least in the academies, and this is obviously coming from a guy who didn't go to one of the academies, but there's a little bit of structure still there. You're going through 4 years of this. You're slowly, you get slapped in the face. You're getting indoctrinated in the military real quickly. Don't get me wrong, but you're slowly getting indoctrinated into what the actual military turns into. So I've always been curious if there's a difference in watching how Christianity remains in somebody if they go through an academy versus thrown right into the military side of the house. You come out as a PFC, you go straight into infantry school, and you're in Baghdad all of a sudden. And it's like, 2 weeks ago I was at home eating dinner with my mom. Like, what just happened?
It wasn't mandatory. And certainly one of the things that West Point tries to do to its cadets is ask you to do more than you have time to do, so that you have to prioritize your life. You literally have to say no to things that I'm just not going to do that, and suffer the repercussions of that. And so it'd be very easy for us at West Point to say no to church, because that's an hour sense. You can get back. And some people just want to sleep that hour, right? Like I had roommates, and I can remember my roommates would just sleep while I got up and got dressed and went to church. And so it's certainly a sacrifice to other things to go to church when you're at the military academy. And then in the military, if you're out in the field, they do have chaplains, and they'll come by and give you a word or pray with you or something like that. But we're not pausing training, and we're not pausing combat so that we can take an hour and worship. That is not an option.
Yeah, it is by far, it's completely not an option at all, right? So you'd be lucky if you're at a FOB that even has a chaplain sometimes, it may just be, we'll see what happens when I get home, and this, when we were in Baghdad, because you and I, we talked before the recording, we were there you were there from 06 to 08, I was there 06 to 07. Internet sure was there, but not really, there wasn't a whole lot of jumping on the internet all that much. There wasn't a whole lot of being able to, if you brought your Bible, that was what you had, and that hopefully you're reading it, because it's not like today where I can jump on YouTube and watch a sermon real quick while I'm, on the other side of the world. It really takes some work to stay engaged and do it, which is necessary. So,
really, I just talked to Jesus. That was my relationship grew, but my knowledge in the word did not. During that time of my life. But there were days that I certainly needed Jesus, because it was just so intense, and the fighting was so intense. And we left with about 400 soldiers in my squadron when we went to Baghdad, and 60 of them were killed, and a whole lot of them got Purple Hearts and had to be sent back home. And so there was just so much activity, and we were losing friends, and soldiers over there, I had a lot of conversations that ultimately blessed my life. But like you said earlier, for a lot of soldiers, it goes the complete opposite direction, because you sit there and you ask yourself, well, why did this happen? Why would God allow this to happen? And they don't have the knowledge that we have of how this world operates, and spiritually, how to see things. And in an environment like that, a wartime environment, you could completely go the other direction. And that happens probably more a lot than the way that mine went, which was I got closer.
Yeah, which I think is an awesome testimony, right? How you said that you did a lot of talking to God throughout that time.
Yeah.
I was one of those people there. It probably pulled me a little bit away, right? Yeah. Where I was like, I remember specifically one time, I don't know if my mom will even listen to this one or if she'll remember this story. I feel like I've talked to her once about it and she doesn't. But I was driving my car. My mom was in it. My fiance at the time, now my wife, was in the car. And I was like, dang, damn it, I forgot that I was angry. Like, I was a very angry, post-war veteran. Yeah. And I got very upset about forgetting to put gas in my car before I got on the highway. And my mom was like, it's okay. Like, God'll work it through. Like, I'm like, God doesn't care about the gas in my tank. I got angry. I was like, he doesn't care about the gas in my tank. If he cared about things like that, then this wouldn't happen and that wouldn't happen. And then everybody got silent in the car. And I did too. I just shut my mouth and drove. And I was like, it took me a while to realize, like, holy crap, dude. Like, that's not how this works. Like, that's not how this world works. It's not God gets to, you just get to say God shouldn't have this and then it doesn't happen. It's like, no, the world is the world. Like, and there's a different way of looking at it. So I want to toss it over to you to say, how did you kind of work through those scenarios running through the streets of Baghdad? I will say I was partially blessed because, again, I was attached to these people. I didn't come from the units. I didn't know any of these people. I'm attached to them. I got to know them while I was there, of course. So even when we lost a guy, like, it would be, that was John. I vaguely remember having a conversation with him. It didn't impact me as much as I'm sure it did with you. These are the guys you deployed with, right? So how did you work through some of those scenarios and get closer to God throughout all of that?
I mean, we could preach 5 sermons on this, right? Like,
we got time.
This isn't a simple answer. I can tell you, first it starts with just understanding the brain and those feelings. When you have an expectation that's missed, your first feeling is hurt. Okay. I expect every one of my soldiers to come home alive. Not all of them did. I'm hurt from that. Now, if you don't handle the hurt, it will move to anger, right? And men move from hurt to anger very quickly. Women, it takes a little longer. It's actually in our advantages as being men to be able to go to our spouse and handle whatever thing we missed on the expectation front while they're in hurt. It's easier to solve that. We get to anger very quickly, right? Our kids get to suffer that consequence. But if anger doesn't get handled quickly, then you can move to resentment. And resentment's very hard to solve. And if you get to resentment, you can also make it to depression, which is where people lose all control, right? And so our feelings, when we have an expectation that is missed, will move from hurt, anger, resentment to depression. And I think, learning that, hey, I had this expectation, and that expectation was hopeful for me. Like, I hoped all my people would come home. But it was probably a little foolish of me to have that expectation. And that's on me, right? The reason why I got hurt from that missed expectation had a lot to do with me. Okay. And so I think a lot of times if we can catch ourselves just in general saying, oh, that hurt, well, let me handle that hurt. Whether it's someone makes it right or we handle it ourselves, if we can handle it and hurt, we can do a lot better. It's a lot easier, but certainly in anger and then certainly in resentment, but before it gets to depression, right? Because there's, at resentment and depression, we really need experts to come in and help us out. We therapists or doctors. We're so far from our ability to control ourselves that now we need professional help. Which any veterans that are listening to this or people in general that are feeling depressed or feeling angry or resentment, they need to just go ahead and just go find somebody that they can work with to get them out of that. But I think I was blessed to have read a book to learn this so that I could see it as a missed expectation. Schuyler can handle that. Also, again, I say Schuyler can handle that, but I always leaned on God. I just I'd have that conversation and say, it's too big for me. It's too big for me. Like, I need you. Work this out in me. Work it out. I don't know what I need. You know what I need. Work it out. And I think that strength showed up in the way that it did through my hope, faith, and love. And that helped. And then I would say the third thing is just understanding that usually when people are hurt or angry, they want to hold someone accountable. And a lot of our brothers in the military held God accountable. Like, and I just, what I would go and tell them is God is, I mean, we call him a father for a reason. If you're a father, you know how you feel about your children. You know how you feel about your children. And God, our God, is not the God of this world. The God of this world is Satan. And Satan just wants to kill, steal, and destroy. That's all he wants to do. And one of Satan's greatest tricks is to do something bad and then get you to blame it on God. That's one of his greatest tricks. And the person that should be held accountable, if we're going to hold anyone accountable to evil acts, is Satan. But he's elusive, and he's deceiving, and he's very crafty. And if you don't know Jesus like I know Jesus, then you will be the one that has that little bit of a chink in your armor that eventually you hold God accountable for that. And you know what? If God doesn't care enough about me to save my buddy, I'm not going to care about God. And I just move the other direction. And that's really tough, right? Like that's why we need spiritual mentors like our pastors to help us understand that and give us lots of different ways that can be presented to us so that we can understand that completely. Because if we don't understand that point completely, then yeah, I mean, it's easy to hold God accountable to bad things that happen. Because if he's all powerful, if he's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and all the things that we say he is, and yet he lets this stuff happen and we don't understand why, then yeah, I mean, we're human. The natural thing for us to do is hold someone accountable, and it's going to be him. Right. And so I just think that I've been blessed with spiritual mentors, with books that help me understand how the brain works. And then, just my upbringing in general, just to have a little bit more of an awareness to what's really taken place, so that I never got in that trap of resentment or depression where I held God accountable to all this stuff instead of either myself or Satan.
Yeah. I mean, that's massive. And, one thing you said in there before I asked you this was that your understanding of the scripture may not have been strengthened during that time, but your relationship with God was. And oftentimes I find that if you don't understand the scripture, it's very difficult to make those jumps that you just talked about, that you were able to make in saying, hey, like, well, if God's the all powerful, then why well, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that Bible that talks about all of this, and how the world again is ruled by Satan, God has complete and utter control. If he wants to, he'll stamp out Satan tomorrow. That's not necessarily the thing. But each and every one of us, including our enemies, have free will to do what they wish with it. And there's one book that I really love called the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And when I first read that, I heard that while he was writing that, he had said that was the most mentally exhausting thing he had ever done. And he needed to have so much time with his pastor to get over mentally what it was that he was doing, because he's trying to get in the brain of Satan and how he works inside of this world. And when you read it, you're like, oh my word, like, this is exactly how the devil has gotten to me so many times in my life. And I wish that I only read that because of my wife. I had never even heard of that book before I got married. But if I can convince somebody at a young age to read that book and understand that these are the things that'll happen in your brain, that you think is true and correct, and all it is the devil putting little things in your brain to make you believe something that is not true, make you understand something that's not real, make you doubt something that is super true. Like, it just is a phenomenal book to read, which I highly recommend everybody read.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I mean, yes, they should. And, for my children, even today, I'm trying to create different perspectives for them to look at things with, and we, at our house, we talk about, well, are you looking at that with your worldly eyes, or are you looking at that with your spiritual eyes? I want them to literally take their spiritual glasses and put them on and see this situation from a spiritual standpoint. Because if I can teach my kids to look at this world as worldly in the flesh and spiritually, the level of wisdom and just opportunity to think in a more complex and thorough way, I mean, they're just going to have that, and it's going to be more than most people have. And I mean, that is why we read the Bible, right? Is so that we have the wisdom in all those words, so that we can see life beyond just the worldly presence of things. I mean, the world's a nasty place and very selfish and all of those things. If you only looked at it from a worldly point of view, you have to be able to see things from a spiritual point of view. And the best way to learn how to do that is to read the Word.
Yes. Again, can't beat that drum enough. I love it. This conversation reminded me, I don't know if you've, do you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast at all?
But I mean, here and there, but I haven't like, I'm not a power user.
Okay. So he just recently had on a former Navy SEAL. I can't remember his name. I'll have to look it up, but a former Navy SEAL, that went through all sorts of mentally, all sorts of stuff, just, not being able to stay on the straight and narrow in any way, shape, or form. But then becomes a Christian and realizes it was while he was deployed to Africa that he really steps into becoming a Christian. He's like, holy crap. And he puts this analogy, and I don't know if this analogy doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the conversation. I just love the analogy. He's like, if you take a pig and you put that pig into this room and you've got this really nasty, smelly pile of trash over there, and you have this Michelin star restaurant plate of food over here, that pig is going to go straight for that trash can and just destroy that up and just love on that, just eat it all up. And this is just what he's at. And then if that person all of a sudden turns into a human being, they're going to be disgusted by who they were, by what was going on, by what they just did, and go straight to that Michelin star meal over here. And it was one of those, it was like, golly, if we could have people understand that all of us have been that pig sitting in that pile of garbage, chasing those things that we shouldn't be chasing, some worse than others, but the whole world is full of that. And it doesn't mean that, God doesn't love them. It doesn't mean that their family doesn't love them. It just means that is the world. Like, we're in a very fallen place. And we need to turn into, a Christ following man or woman and chase after that Michelin restaurant instead of that daggum trash can.
We could just do this all day. But, I love it when Jesus said, "Hey, the healthy don't need a doctor; the sick need a doctor." I mean, God is after the pigs more than He's after you and I.
For sure.
Now more is expected of you and I, but He's after the pigs. Like He wants to clean their lives up so badly, and He wants us to help. But that's who He's after. Remember the story of the prodigal son. The guy, the son that's been living life the right way doesn't get celebrated. It's the one that finally makes the decision to come back home and start to live a better life that we go celebrate. And we all should live that way. Every life that we get to save, or every pig we get to get out of the dumpster. That's beautiful. And I'll tell you, just as I get older, that's the stuff that I'm more excited about than anything else, right? It's not, I'd be more excited about that than another rental property for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. There's a lot more long lasting effects of that than there is from that rental property too. So for sure. I want to kind of move. I wanted to chat with you more about Iraq, but I want to shift. Maybe we'll do that on podcast round 2. But I want to shift to how you left the military, right? You said you went from Hood to Bragg, and you left the military while you were in Bragg. Probably a wise move. You get to Bragg and you say, "Hey, Vietnam is not where I want to be. I'm leaving the Army. Thank you very much." Yeah. But at least that's what I do to harass my Army friends.
No, I loved everything about the military. I think I was built for it.
Okay.
So part of the story I didn't tell was I actually became a professional athlete. I got to play professional baseball, and I left that to go into the military. But I was still a professional athlete, and so I was built to be a guy on the ground with a rifle fighting on behalf of our country. That was, I was built to be a warrior. I'm in my mid 40s now, so I might not look like it anymore, but there was a day, right, when you didn't want to meet me on the battlefield.
Yeah, I understand.
But right before I went to Afghanistan, I was talking with Kristen. I was like, hey, I want to have kids. She's like, well, I want to have kids too. I was like, well, what are we waiting on? She's like, well,
you got to be home.
Yeah. Well, more or less that was it. Like, hey, I don't want to have your kid and you not come home from combat. And she knew how hard we were fighting. And yeah, she didn't want to have a kid and then have a reminder of me, the husband she lost to combat, for the rest of her life. And that I respected that. And then she went on to say, like, hey, I'm going to be with you forever. I'm never going to leave you. And don't take this like I'm not enjoying my life. But this wasn't the life that I dreamed we would have together, where I would go for a year at a time. And then even the year that I was back home, 6 months out in the field, she was getting 6 months with me every 24 months. And it just wasn't, it wasn't the married life that she thought she would have. And, you talked about your hierarchy. At the time for me, it was God, Kristen, Army, right, or country, and what I was doing, the actual reality of my life, it was God, country, Kristen, and I chose that. I chose to serve, and she chose me, and so she chose to be in that life too. But the second that I had a chance to make a decision, I decided to exit the military. And so, yeah, I left the military to make a better life for my family, better lifestyle, I'll say. And then really I wanted to have kids. So, to have a chance to even have one, you had to get out.
Yeah. And that's good motivation for a guy who wants to have kids. That's good motivation to jump ship. So,
when I was 29, I was like, I wasn't that old, but I wanted a whole litter of them.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'd love to. I've always told my wife I'd love to have 7. If she'd let me have 7, I'd have 7. But once we hit 40, she was like, "We got to stop. We can't. We can't."
Well,
so
you and I don't
3 days.
Either. We don't make
them. Exactly. That's why I told her. I said, "You control the factory. You let me know when it's shut down and put the sign up and let it all." Like I'm not the one who has to carry this thing around. So you do make it look really easy. My wife makes it look super easy having kids. Like,
good for her.
I'm mind-boggling to me. I'm glad I don't have to do that. But. So you left the military, and then how did you start getting into the business world?
Well, my undergraduate is in engineering, and I knew after 6 years in the military I wasn't going to be an engineer. That's how I knew enough about engineering to know that I had no business doing it after 6 years. And so funny enough, I took the GMAT while I was in Afghanistan to get into the University of Texas, their Macomb School of Business, and somehow. Got a high enough score that I got accepted to Macomb's. And so when I got out of the military, I reported straight to Macomb's for my MBA. And, and I never had an entrepreneur in my life. But I did have a guy tell me, hey, look, when you're in the MBA program, don't just chase a job, chase a person. Go try to find a leader that you think is going to make you the best business person you can be, and go work for that person. And so while I was at the MBA program, I was recruited to Schuyler Williamson, their corporate office here in Austin, Texas. And the lady that hired me, she was the president of the company at the time. She was the first person that I had met with that I was like, you know what, this lady is really close to a real general. Because when a general walks in the room, you're like, wait a minute, the power in the room just shifted. Right? They just have such a presence to them and a command presence and authority that you just feel that person walk in the room. And I was interviewing with all these turds that they had great jobs and they were great companies and benefits, and it was just like, man, am I really going to go work for these jokers? And it just nothing was inspiring until I met with her. And she literally offered me less than half for pay that everybody else was offering. I mean, they were offering more than double than what she offered me. But, to her credit, she said, hey, if you are who you say you are, after a year, I'll make it right. And, she tripled my pay after 1 year in the business because I proved that even though I had no track record in business, that I was going to step in, be a leader, that Macomb's actually taught me what I needed to know to do it well in business. And to her credit, she did it. I mean, she made me whole. And then that was the start of my business career. And it just happened to be in real estate. I wasn't hunting for real estate. I was hunting for a person, and it just happened to be real estate.
I loved that when you said that, like chase after the person, not the job or the career. And that's one of those things that too many people chase the career, and then you end up just getting beat down because you have bad leadership, you have a bad whatever. You're just like, oh, I thought this was going to be the perfect thing. Yeah. And it's like, man, be adventurous. Go find the person that you want to chase after. Go find the person who's got those skills that you want to model. Because I'm sure in the military you had plenty of leaders just like I did that we learned a lot about what not to do. And you don't want to work for those. So when you're chasing a job, you could easily end up in one of those. But when you're chasing a person, you know who you're going after. And sure, you may not have the money that you're looking for, but you're going to have a much better experience. Man, I love that.
Yeah. And you fast forward, 20 years, and now as the owner of the business, I want to be that leader. I want to be the leader that when you interview with our company and you meet me, you're like, well, it doesn't really matter what these people offer me. I've got to work for this guy. I've got to be in his org chart because I'm going to learn so much about not only leadership, but business and how to live your life the right way. And so my story to some extent is inspired who I am today so that I can just be that leader for someone else that is chasing a person and not just a job.
I absolutely love it. And do you encourage your team to do that same thing? Like when you're doing those interviews, or when you have somebody on your team and you're like, chase a person, like maybe it's not you, maybe it is somebody else. Maybe they need to chase somebody else. That's fine. But it's better that they're chasing the right person than the wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I have the great opportunity of meeting with a lot of our leaders in our organization, and that's what I'm pushing them to be. I love John Maxwell's definition of leadership, in that it's influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? Well, for me, to have someone's true influence, they have to look at who you are, your life, and they've got to want something that you are living. So, and it could be your wealth, it could be your business acumen, it could be your physicality. I mean, it could be any of those things, but they got to want something. And if they want something that you're living out, then you will have their influence. They will be all ears when you talk to them. And as a leader, you got to have that. And so when I'm challenging my young leaders on our team, I'm like, well, what's your thing, man? I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but if you're going to carry the title leader, then you better be pursuing excellence in all parts of your life. Health, mental, spiritual, like all parts of your life, your marriage, all parts of your life, you need excellence. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you have people looking up to you, and you owe it to them to be influential, right? Because you took on the job leader. I didn't force you to take that job. You asked for it, and I pay you for it, and you continue to say yes every day. And I do ask my team to do it. I mean, it's important.
I love it. It's the coaching and mentoring side of the house. I've caught myself a lot in my past, not very good at it because I'm very direct, abrupt, and I don't do a very good job of sitting down and just having the conversation. How do you kind of structure those conversations to be able to sit down, not become an overbearing person, like a lot of military folks tend to be, right? A little bit more overbearing, a little bit more brash in the way that they come across. I tend to be that way. I lack emotion in almost all aspects of life other than with my kids and my wife. So how do you sit down and have those conversations to really connect with people in there, to really be able to help them understand, and not because sometimes you need to be like, hey, you're screwing this up. Like, you're not showing up as a leader that I need you to be, but we need to be able to say that in a way that builds them up and helps our business and them, not just me.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being clear about the expectation and the standards on this team. And so if you're saying brash and that, hey, I'm being extremely clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, if you're being clear in a way that's just hurtful in the way that you're saying it, then all right, man, back it up, because nobody asked for you to come abuse them verbally. Like, they're at the end of the day, they're working for you, helping you build your business and doing it so that they can provide for their family. You come abuse them, like, no, that's not okay. But no, I think that And so I'm a foster parent. I left that out too. But I'm a foster parent. And when you're a foster parent, you're around trauma a lot. And the one thing about the brain, when it experiences trauma, the logical, the prefrontal cortex, and the midbrain, the emotional part, they shut down completely. And the primitive part of the brain, the back of the brain, takes over. And someone's living with the primitive part of the brain, but they're not thinking logically and they're not controlling their emotions. It's period. And so nothing's getting through to them when they're in a trauma state. And some of us have been to combat, and some of us, the most traumatic thing they've ever gone through is someone yell at them. Okay. And that's not their fault. That's just life. If you sit down and have a conversation to really work on someone and you don't make them feel safe and you don't make them feel like you care and that they can trust you, you will make no impact. And so as a leader, what you got to do is you got to ask yourself, who does this person need me to be so that they can be their best? And so once you have that answer on the inside, then you can sit down with them and you can tool them up. You can get them dialed in. You can train them. You can equip them. You can motivate them. But it starts with you asking yourself, who do they need me to be so that they can be their best? It's not, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to deliver this to them. That's the leaders that do it that way, they lose influence because they're not trustworthy, right? It doesn't matter how smart Trump is. It doesn't matter how many right decisions he's making. If he wants the whole world to listen to him, then he will need to communicate in the way that the world needs to hear it from him. And that just happens to be the thorn in his side, is that he doesn't communicate as a leader the way that everyone needs to receive that, to trust and know that he cares. The dude cares, right? And let's hope that we can trust him. He's president of the United States, right? But it's got to be more than what's on the inside of you. You got to give it to them the way that they receive it, right? Or else they're going to be in a freeze, fight, or flight mode because they're letting the primitive part of their brain run because they're in a trauma state. You freaked them out. You scared them.
So who does this person need me to be to get them at their best? Absolutely love it. It's I try to tell myself that oftentimes with my kids. Because, something along those lines, not that exact verbiage, of course, because the only way that my kids are going to learn is by me showing up in the best way possible, right? The only way they're going to learn from me anyways, they're going to learn a lot without me, but the only way for me is for me to show up in the best way possible. So how do I step into that? How do I show up on a daily basis in that right light? So I want to shift over to the kids side of the house because that's where my brain went to when you said that. It stepped completely away from the business and turned right into my kids. So as you're raising your own two kids that are 8 and 12, and you have foster kids coming in and out, what sort of conversations do you and your wife have about how to show up best with in front of your kids together as well as separate? What sort of things do you do on your own to try to help guide your thought process in showing up for the kids in the way that they need you to be so that they can be their best?
Yeah, man. Well, I'll just say, I'm on a podcast and I'm speaking as if I never make any mistakes. So that's
because people with podcasts don't make mistakes. So everybody knows that we're perfect. Yeah. It's
a process, isn't it? I mean, it's a journey, and when you make a mistake, you get up, you dust yourself off, and you make the next right decision. Like that's all you can do. And so there's a whole lot of that going on in our journey as parents, right? This is the first time we've ever been parents is with these kids. And so, there's a lot of getting up, dusting off, and just making the next right decision and and encouraging each other because our heart is always in the right spot. But again, we're just not perfect, right? And these are new problems all of the time that we're solving. We've never had a 12-year-old until we had a 12-year-old. You know what I mean? It's it is what it is.
I swear, you said you've only listened to one of my podcasts, but I say that sort of thing. I've been saying that to my son since he was born. Like, I have never been a dad to a 5-year-old, and you've never been a 5-year-old. Let's figure this out together. I don't know, but sorry for interrupt, but I love the thought process.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I don't want them to expect dad to be perfect. I want them to see excellence in their dad, but not expect perfection, because if they expect that, again, we're on our way to hurt, right? Because I'm not perfect. I'm going to raise my voice. I'm going to make poor decisions. I'm always doing my best. And I always love them, but it's never perfection. No, I think Kristen and I, we both work on our faith individually. And then we have some time together that we talk about our faith. And I think, we believe that if the Spirit is strong inside us, then a lot of the fruits of the Spirit will come out in just our daily activity, right? So peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, these things are fruits of the Spirit. And so, every day I wake up, I read my Bible and I spend time in prayer, and I do pray for my own endeavors, and that they're aligned with what God would have for my life. But I pray for everyone too. I pray for all the people in my life, and I pray extra hard for my wife. And I know there's power in prayer, and I know that I'm speaking things into existence into her and her life every morning when I pray for her. And so I'm doing that. So I'm doing that for myself, and I'm doing it for her. We also know when we need a break. Sometimes Kristen just needs a break, and you know what? I'm in the business of saying yes. If she says she needs something, even though it's inconvenient for me, or even though I might lose out on some business that I'm trying to work on, I'm just going to say yes. I didn't used to do that when I was a young husband and young father. I used to say like, I have to finish this and then I will come home. Nowadays, I'll just say yes. I'll suffer the consequences, because I believe that all these other things in the world are rubber balls. They'll bounce back up. But my wife, her relationship with our children, her relationship with me, those are glass balls. If we drop those, they break, right? Those aren't going to bounce back up. Not as easy anyways. And so I just say yes. And if she needs a break, she gets a break. If I notice her getting a little thin, I'll say, hey, why don't you go do something, right? Like, just go in your room and lock the door. Like, do what you got to do. Take a walk. Go to Target. Do whatever you do.
Yeah.
But let me just take it for a little while. Like, you just relax, because it ain't going to get any better without a little bit of separation. Even though she loves our kids higher than me on the totem pole, it isn't going to get any better once it gets there. And so even if she doesn't ask for it, you got to tap her out sometimes, right? I mean, it's like tag team wrestling. You just tap them and you get in there and you wrestle for a little while. And our kids, and so you move through evolutions, right, of your kids too. My kids are 8 and 12. I can say, hey guys, I need you to walk away right now. I need you to walk away, go read a book, go do whatever you want to do, and go do it in your rooms. And it's because mom needs a break. And they're old enough now, we put in our time. They're old enough now that they say, yes, sir, and they go do that. And they, sometimes they may take it a little personal, but like, you know what? If you need to take it personal to go do it, then take it personally. But like, you need to go. Okay. Life lesson, chalk it up.
Yeah, there's a tissue box on the way by. You can grab some on the way. So
that's right, man. Because like Kristen is higher on the list for me. And so I'm going to defend her first, children second. And it just isn't going to get any better. And so I think just knowing your spouse, and knowing where their endurance is starting to waver a little bit, and kind of getting in there and interjecting before something's said or done that everybody feels bad about. Like we're just good at that. I see it. I know her. I'm present. I'm not the dad that does a lot of dad trips or goes out with the guys. I don't do a lot of that. So I'm around a good bit. It's simpler than maybe easy. Like, I know it's not easy because we're like in the trenches, being parents every day. But what we do for each other is simple.
Yeah,
I think the fruits of the Spirit is a big deal. I mean, that is where the source of patience and gentleness and kindness and self-control is.
Of course, the three that I struggle the most with, patience, gentleness, and kindness, are the first three that you say, of course, yes. Yeah.
It's written that way.
It is written that way. It is written that way, and for a reason. It's a good reminder for everybody listening and for anybody is to remember that you've never done this before, even if it feels the same as yesterday. Today is a new day, and you have never lived this day before. So let's just give yourself some grace. Give yourself a second. If you need to step aside, step aside. My wife and I do the tag team thing all the time. We're like, all right, you're in, you know. Sometimes it's a subtle just touch on our back that lets us know that, okay, somebody's here to help me. Sometimes it's go ahead and go have a seat in the other room. Just take a breath, take a second, run to the store real quick.
I'm done being mom right now. I'm done being mom today.
You go roll. I got this, you know?
Yeah. And this, I mean, when you're a team, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right. Like thank God.
I think it's a good example for the kids too, right? The kids could see that, wow, they support each other. They help each other. They may not right now at 8 and 12. They may look at it like you said and be a little butthurt about it on their way into their room. But later on, they'll be like, man, Dad was really supporting Mom. And hopefully your daughter says, man, I want a husband that does that for me. And your son says, I'm going to do that for my wife one day, you know, and be that example and show them what it means. Because again, more things are caught than taught. So show it, be the example, you know? Yeah.
Well, and if they don't understand why Mom's all worked up, then that's your opportunity, Dad, to explain why people get stressed out. And, you know, I don't like these words, stressed and overwhelmed and all that, but you need to explain that. Like, hey, there's a length to how far they will go with something that's not natural for them or something they want to endure. Like there's just a link to it. And you need, as a human, you need to be able to see that in someone else and say, "Ooh, I'm going too far. Like I'm about to hurt them." And when hurt people, their number one response typically is to hurt back. And so if you don't want to be hurt, you need to stop, right? And treat people the way that you want to be treated.
My 10-year-old is working on figuring out those buttons to push because he's 10 and he's starting to get a little testosterone coming into his body and figuring out finding where those boundaries are. And my wife and I have been trying to discuss with him, like, how do we teach him where that boundary is? Because we're a very sarcastic family. We love to joke and play and all of the stuff. But sarcasm can turn into bitterness real quick. Yeah, exactly. We're both veterans. Exactly. Yeah. So, it could turn into bitterness real quick, because your sarcasm could be, it can start off as fun, but then turn into poking fun and then turn into hurt. And we're trying to help him see that line of okay, now's not the time for sarcasm because you could see Mommy's face right now. Do you see that? Yeah. That's the Cuban in her coming out. We don't need the Cuban in her coming out. Let's leave that alone.
Yeah. We said, read the room. Hey, read the room, man.
Yeah. Read the room, dude. Yeah. But yeah, it's a new world for me. I've never had to do that, so I always try to ask people, especially with boys, what did you do when your son started to get some testosterone going on in his body and think that it's time to start testing things, right? I mean, he's 10, I can still take care of that part's not an issue, but it can be if I let it go now, if I don't do anything about it. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the best books I ever read, taught me something that it's a small shift in the way that you speak to the kids and the way you think about things, but it's so impactful. When we use the word why, we immediately put someone on the defense, right? Because it's very personal. When I say, why did you do that? It's very personal. It accuses them. It's all the negative things. But if you were to say, hey, tell me, what were you thinking? So you use the word what. What were you thinking when you did that? What you actually are inspiring your kids to do is to think before they act, because clearly you did that because you didn't think before you did it. If you would have thought before you said that, or if you would have thought before you went and did that, you would have said, whoa, this is a bad idea. And I tell my children all the time, or I don't tell them, I ask them, why does Daddy make you say yes, sir, and no, sir? And my children know the answer to that is so that I think before I speak. I mean, it is polite right? And it's respectful. And I want my kids to be polite and respectful. But what I want my kids to do more than anything is to think before they speak. And so, yes, if they don't say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, or thank you and please, and all the things that we call polite, if they don't do those things, I make them do it over again. And then I ask them, why does daddy ask you to do that? And they tell me, so that we think before we speak. They are going to say, because we need to think before we speak or think before we do something 5,000 times before they leave me and go to college. Because if I can just get them to do that, we're going to win, man. We're going to win.
Yeah, it's that separator between thought and mouth needs to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So your 10-year-old especially, because he is hitting the boundaries, it's like, hey, what made you think that was okay? Or what were you thinking when you did that? When you ask him those what words or, those what questions, it forces him to think. And then you got to say, okay, I need you to think before you act next time. Okay. You want to act like an adult. It's time to, or you want to do adult things. The way that you act like an adult is you think before you go do something.
I love it. And, as you were saying that, just the other day, I told my son, I said, why did you give me that answer? Yeah. And I just wanted to know his thought process. I wasn't trying to be accusatory. Like, I literally just wanted to know his thought process. Well, why'd you give me that answer? And he was like, well, it was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll come. I was like, no. Like, I'm not trying to do it. And I could see as I was writing down that note from what you were saying that why put him into the defense. He felt like it was negative. It wasn't productive for him to hear it in that way. Like, he needed to hear, hey, what were you thinking about with that? Yeah. And when I did adjust it, oh my goodness, he started explaining some things to me. I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And you are exactly right. I've got no issues with what you did.
Yeah. Because what the therapist would tell you is that we want to hold the action accountable. We don't want to hold the kid, right? Let's not hold the kid accountable. Let's hold the action accountable, right? You did the wrong thing. That's why you're being punished right now. You're not a bad kid. You're a good kid, but what you did was wrong. All right. So let's talk about what you did, because that's what we need to fix.
Yeah, and it hurts me so bad when I'm out in public and I hear somebody say something like, what are you, stupid? Why'd you do that? And it's like, like, golly, that just breaks my heart. It's like that poor kid is going to, like, it's going to go one direction or another, right? It's going to, and it's neither one of them are going to be good. But it hurts me. And I think to myself, like, every time I say something that I'm just like, can I yank that back real quick? Because my thought word separator did not work there. And I just spat something out. Yeah. And like it is, I always tell the kids too, it's like, I have zero issue with emotions. I have a problem with the actions that are caused by your emotion. So how can we work through this to make sure that your actions don't turn into something, right? So it's, the same concept on the thought process you were just talking about. And it's difficult with kids because, again, I've never been a dad before. I'm learning how to do this. And now I've got 3 kids. And my son, he would say, well, Dad, you've had a 6-year-old before. You always used to tell me you've never had a 6-year-old before. Well, now you have another one. So you've done this. I said, yeah, but that 6-year-old didn't have a 10-year-old that's influencing him and didn't have a little sister that's running around the house. Like, everything is different now. Like, sure. It's another 6-year-old, but it's a different person in a different scenario.
Yeah. Well, and listen, we're just human, right? Full circle all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation when people were holding God accountable. When we're hurt, or when our children behave, when they misbehave, they missed our expectation and we're in a moment of hurt, okay? And men get to anger very quickly, right? We just skip hurt and we go straight to anger, and that's why we raise our voice at our kids. If we recognize that, and we just say, like, if we just did a better job as leaders of communicating our expectations to our kids, or just catching ourselves in the moment before we sped off and just got upset with them, we might be able to fix that. We might be better at it, right? Like, I need to take a break because I'm about to unload on him, and he probably deserves it. But I'm in a state of hurt or anger right now, and that those people that say those hurtful things is because they're yelling at their kids in a state of hurt or anger, or maybe their kids have done it so much that now they're in a state of resentment, right? And that's why they say those things to their kids, because they resent their kids. And we need to be aware, right? And that's why it's so good to have a spouse that's a good partner, because they can say, hey, like, I've noticed the way that you've been talking to her, and I gotta call it out. I mean, we need to talk about this. Like, what's causing you to speak to her that way? She's just 6 years old, right? And then like I've been there as a father. Then I'm like, oh man, you're right. Like, I'm raising my kids from a state of anger instead of how I want my father to speak to me. And they don't deserve that. They deserve to be held to a high standard and taught and raised appropriately. They don't deserve to be spoken to from a position of anger. I'm in my 40s. She's 12. Like, seriously, man, get yourself right as a leader. Get yourself right, and then go have that conversation. And I'm better at that now because I'm just older. But I was, you know what? And my daughter hates this because she's 12, right? Like, she's a big girl now. I'm like, put your nose in that corner right there. And then when I calm down, I'm going to come back and talk to you. But you put your nose in that corner. And it's actually devastating to her as a 12-year-old to have to put her nose in the corner. But the next step is much harsher than that. But I need a second. It ain't about you in this moment. Like, I need a second now, because if I were to try to teach you as your father right now, it would be yelling, and it would be hurtful for everybody. And so I'm all right. You go right there and you stand there and let me go calm down, and I'll go walk around the house, and then when I've calmed down, I'll come back and deliver an appropriate leadership response in that moment instead of just react, because that's what people in anger are doing. They're just reacting. But we need to, as leaders, we need to respond, and it's when we respond, it's not hurtful, because we're saying things that are going to build them up in the future, not tear them down in the moment.
Yeah, it may feel hurtful to them because they're being told where they're screwing up, but man, oh man, it's not actual. It's not, the intent is not hurt, right?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Just growth in general is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant made a career of that. But it's okay feeling uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, you're getting better.
For sure. Yeah. Muscle doesn't build by being, soft and squishy and, hanging out. It's built from tearing it up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What sort of things, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. How much do your kids understand about what you do for business, what you do for work? Like, do they have a good idea that, you're an entrepreneur, you own a business, you lead teams, that sort of stuff? Or is it something that's a little bit softer than that?
Probably pretty soft. I mean, they know dad works hard. They know dad sells houses and builds houses and has laundromats. I mean, I've taken them to the stores when we've done like giveaways. We give away like turkey dinners at Thanksgiving. We give away backpacks at the start of school, and we give away gift cards at Christmas time. I mean, we do a lot for the community, because our primary customer at the laundromat is a low income person. And so I take my children who don't get the opportunity to live that life, and I take them with me to do some of this work. And so they have some ideas, but I'm not teaching them a whole lot about that. The things that I'm pounding into their head is this what excellence looks like. If I send them off and they love God and love his children, and they treat other people the way they want to be treated, if I can just send them off with those two things, then I'm going to say I did a pretty good job as a parent. Now, my son, I wrote this book. I know you know about it, but I wrote this book called The Steady Leader. Now, my son he will introduce me as a steady leader. He said, "This is my dad. He's a steady leader." And I don't like he hadn't read this book. He's 8 years old, but like I guess I've done a good enough job branding myself that he'll call me that. But yeah, I mean, my kids just not too long ago they had like some Veterans Day thing at school, and they asked me to come speak at it, and they were like, "Hey, I didn't know you were in the Army." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I was in the Army, baby."
That's
like,
hilarious.
Let me show you some of my old stuff. And they thought it was cool and it was awesome. And then they asked me a bunch of questions about it, but they had no idea because, we just, that was a hard time, and it was a very kinetic time. So it wasn't, the stories that I can tell from the military, I just don't know up until now, as the kids are a little older, they just weren't really appropriate. And so,
yeah, no kidding.
So they know a little bit, but not all the ins and outs.
Okay. Do you have intention as they grow to kind of include them a little bit more in the business aspect and help them kind of understand that, or are you going to kind of keep them at arm's length?
Well, I'm working on their identities. Okay. So, you had talked about actions and results earlier. I learned a model once that your identity will inform your mindset will inform your actions, and your actions will produce the results. And so I kind of think of the world in that way from an individual standpoint. And, and I'm a good enough reader of people that I know where the strengths are in my children. And, one I call a connector, and the other one I call an inventor, right? My daughter can just walk in any room at any time and make everyone fall in love with her. She can make every single person in the room just feel better about themselves, come together as a team. She can motivate like that. My daughter is a connector. And so when we talk about what she's going to do in the future, I'm trying to give her an identity of connection, because I know that if she can be that in the world, then she's going to bless the world. If she were to say, well, Daddy, what do you think I should do? I would tell her, go be a therapist, baby, because you can sit down with someone and you can make them feel better. Now, you need to be smart and know the models and understand how all this works. But the point of a therapist is to make someone feel better about themselves, period. And now my son, he's a little bit more of a loner. Like, he can sit by himself all day long and his batteries still be charged. He's a critical thinker. He's a math guy, very process oriented, maybe a little bit of a perfectionist. Like, he's my inventor. He thinks in the abstract and is just super extraordinary in just the way that he can break things down. So with him, I call him my inventor, and he hadn't invented anything and he hasn't expressed any interest in that. But it's going to play to his strengths, and it's going to be good for his identity as he thinks of himself as a critical thinker, an inventor, creative, kind of abstract thinker, well-read, educated kind of guy. And so I'm more working on identity than I am what they're going to do in the business. Now, I would love it if my babies just stayed home and worked with their daddy every day. Like, that would be a dream come true. I'm not committed to that at this point. I would love it if my daughter went to UT and stayed at home through college and then helped me sell real estate. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would
cool, man. She makes me feel better about myself.
Good. I love it. Do they, when as you're building these identities and you're having conversations with like your daughter about how everyone loves her and she's a connector and she's doing all this stuff, and your son hears that, and then vice versa, when you're talking to your son about, man, I love how your critical thinking skills and how abstract you are on these things, and your daughter hears that, does that ever foster a sense of jealousy of each other? Like, well, I wish that Dad would say that I was good and an abstract thinker. Or is it more that it fosters more joy in each other and like, wow, he really does do that, and then build each other up?
Well, I ask them, what do they think about each other? But it has to be loving, right? Because, there are times when they will be very critical of one another. They're siblings just like everybody else. But I'll say, hey, Bo, what are some great qualities about your brother? And she'll list them off. And they're not hard to see. We know each other well. And I say, okay, hey, Rhett, what are the things that you know about Bo that are extraordinary, that she does really well? And so I invite them to build each other up. And when it comes out of their mouth, they have ownership. And it's sure, like, yes, Bo's popular at school. That's a gift she has. Bo, like my daughter wakes up in the morning and she's like, "Hey, Daddy." Like every morning, it's unbelievable. It's the biggest it's one of the biggest blessings I have in my day every single day, that I get to wake my daughter up and right away just like blow me back with joy. My son, he's worried about being bored at school. Like, I just go to school bored, but it makes sense. When I just told you who they are, it just makes sense. And they know that about each other. I mean, I don't know. They're pretty competitive because they both play sports, and they want to win and they want to be the best and all that. And my son at 8 is really athletic, and he's pretty big for his age. And my daughter is athletic, but she's kind of small for her age at 12. And so they're pretty competitive right now. And so there's a lot of push and pull, but in this regard, they know who each other are.
I'm trying to remember where it was at. In the Bible, it talks about, as your body has different limbs, so does the body of Christ, right? Where each person has a different gift and different things. And I've been trying to really preach that to my kids, and in helping them understand that just because I'm complimenting one on one thing doesn't mean that it's a lack in somebody else. Like, we all have our different gifts and we all have our different things. And my 2 boys are very competitive with each other. They love each other to death. They are like, it is phenomenal to watch them. But I do catch them looking at it. Like, if I'm giving a compliment to one, it's like, wait a second. Does that mean I'm not good at that? I'm like, hey, I'm not saying nobody's good or not. Like, it's something that I have started to struggle with right now, especially with my 10-year-old learning a little bit more. But that isn't, the way I see that is, it isn't about the compliment that you're giving their brother. It's, they want the attention too. Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's true. Yeah.
It's like, I want your attention too, and I want it first. Like next time. I mean, that's really what it is. They just love Dad, and they want Dad to be all about them. But you got brothers and sisters, so Dad you have to share me.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? And Mom, because she comes first. I'll tell you that. You guys know that every time. So.
Well, I tell them, man, I'm like, hey, look, me and Mom are going to be gone one day, and you know who you're going to really want to lean on, and that's the one right there. Like, you guys are going to be like this one day, and you're going to have to rely on each other, and you might as well just start now.
Yeah, Very true. Very true. Yeah. You might as well. Yeah, I love it. So as the business is kind of growing, you have a few different things that you're doing. What are your end goals? Where are you trying to go with the businesses? What are you trying to build? Are you chasing an empire, or are you just kind of like, I just love doing this right now and I just want to keep it rolling?
Yeah, I'm on a mission, I think, of influence. I'm trying to just lead well and touch as many lives as I possibly can. I've talked about John Maxwell twice on this podcast now. I listened to John talk about gifts one time, and everything that we have in this life is a gift. Everything. The fact that I'm sitting in this chair talking to you at this moment in time, with my health, with my family that I get to talk about, my businesses that I get to talk about, the fact that I can say a sentence, and put it all together, it's all a gift. And gifts can be given and they can be taken away. And when we have gifts, we can either hold on to our gifts with closed fists, or we can walk around with our gifts with open hands. And sure, when we're walking around with open hands, giving of our gifts to people, yes, we are giving, but when our hands are open, we can take more too. But if we walk around holding on to our gifts with our hands closed, we can't take anything either, right? Like, we can't hold anymore because our fists are closed. And so I think about what I have as a gift that God will either bring me more or he'll take it all away. It's all his, and I'm okay with either way. What I'm going to try to do every day is bring as much love as I possibly can into this world. I'm a hustler, so I'm going to bring hustle. I pursue excellence. I'm going to give it all I have. But I'm not, if I have an empire one day, which, I pray that I do, then great. If I don't, then great. I mean, I think the outcome is still love and it's still pursuit of excellence. And so I'm not going to be hurt if I don't have an empire. But I intend to build a very big business that's going to influence a lot of people that I can influence and make their lives better. That's what I intend. It's up to God whether he wants to give it to me or not.
Man, oh man. I'm not sure there's much more to say after that. That is absolutely phenomenal, Schuyler. Well, I'm pretty sure that I could have this conversation for another 7 hours, but Schuyler, I greatly appreciate you jumping on. I've really appreciated the wisdom that you've shared. I am on, I think, my 6th page of notes right now, trying to work through all of this and ideas and thoughts to go sit down with my wife about, and things to work on with my kids' identity and all sorts of stuff that I'm really looking forward to sharing. And I really want my kids to listen to this podcast as well. So I really appreciate you spending some time with me. If folks are hearing this and they're like, hey, I want to learn more about Laundry Luv, I want to reach out to Schuyler. I love the way he does business and appreciate hearing you. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'll give them 2 things. You can go and see everything that we're working on if you just go to SchuylerWilliamson.com. And my name is spelled really unique, so go to the show notes to see how it's spelled. But you can also go on Amazon and buy the book, The Steady Leader. And the models that I live my life by are in that book, most of them anyways. And so if you want a really great way of leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your business through models, pick that book up. And most everyone has liked it so far. Nice. So I pray that there's something in there that'll make your life better.
I am positive there will be. Just by listening to this podcast, I'm sure their life is going to be improved, let alone picking up the book and hearing a little bit more from you. So SchuylerWilliamson.com, that will be in the show notes. The Steady Leader, look him up. Schuyler, again, thank you so very much for jumping on. Everybody listening, please share this with somebody that you think is going to get some value out of it, which will be pretty much everybody. Just put it in your contacts list, send it to your entire contacts list, share it to everybody. Please also comment below. Let us know what your favorite part was. Let us know what you agreed with, you disagreed with. Let's have some conversation about it. I'm looking forward to some feedback that I get in email form. Schuyler, again, thank you so much. Everybody listening, thank you. And we will see everybody on the next show.
God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.